6 o'clock. I want to welcome you all to the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting in Madison, Indiana, April 10th, 2023. And could we have a attendance roll call, please?
Mark Acosta,
Here.
Nancy Burkhart,
Here.
Rick Ferris,
Here.
Scott Baldwin.
Here. We have 2 months' minutes to approve. We have from February 13 meeting and March 20th. Board members, have you had a chance to go through all these minutes? Are there any changes or corrections?
None here. I don't have any.
No. I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose no. Minutes are approved. We have several renewals. Mason and Medford. I'm going to read the ones who have paid, and in each case there were no complaints. So Mason and Medford Auto Sales, Jim Mack, Camille Fife, Eric Davis, and also Darlissa Davis, 431 Ivy Tech. These have all paid their renewal fee, no complaints. Therefore, I move that we renew these conditional uses.
Second that.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Now we have a couple that have not paid. Russell Linville, 1801 Allen Street. That was a permit for an automobile repair business. And One Scientific, 2715 Clifty Drive. That's an engineering office and lab. And Kimberly Taylor, Jefferson County Transitional Services. That's at 309 St. Michael's. These have had no complaints, but they have not paid their renewal fees yet. Therefore, I move that we instruct our attorney to send them a letter to the effect that their fees are late, their conditional uses have expired, but if they pay their renewal fee before our next regular meeting, their conditional use permits will be renewed. It's my motion.
Second.
I think we have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. And we have one more. Hanover Baptist Church, located 3894 West State Road 56. This one is a conditional use permit for a worship center, and I understand they are requesting that this be made into a longer renewal term. And I understand there may be somebody here in the audience to speak about this. I guess not. Well, board members, I have consulted with our attorney and with staff specifically about whether or not there had to be notification to neighbors and so forth, and they've said no, so we are at liberty to grant them a renewal with a longer term. So board members, do you have any comments about this?
I know we've done that in the past with other worship services. What were they, 10 years?
The one I'm thinking of is Prince of Peace Catholic, which was 5 years, but it could be any term that you thought appropriate.
Did they request a specific term?
They did not.
Board members, I therefore make a motion that we lengthen this conditional use term to 5 years per our previous practice.
I'll second that.
We have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. And that concludes our renewals. And tonight, we only have one new application. Sharon Dagger, 217 East 4th Street, requesting a conditional use permit for an owner-occupied residence with short-term rentals, primarily for travel nurses. So if somebody would like to come up and address the board, what your plans are, and so forth. And the rules do require your name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Dagger. I live at 217 East 4th Street. I also own 215 East 4th Street. My husband and I live on the lower floor of our home. The upper floor is currently unoccupied, and I also own 215 East 4th Street, and currently I have a regular rental in that location. I previously owned a home in West Virginia, and for 15 years we leased that home out, and one of the occupants that leased from me was a traveling nurse. So I have had experience with traveling nurses. King's Daughters Hospital / the new owners frequently bring traveling nurses to town. Their length of stay usually depends upon the hospital and the nurses. It generally runs anywhere from a week to 6 weeks, or sometimes it's a long-term occupancy, but generally speaking, it is for a few weeks. There generally is only the nurse rather than a whole family. We have ability to accommodate 2 such rentals to a traveling nurse, and it's my understanding they do have a shortage of that type of situation in Madison because there's just not enough rental property. Are there questions that perhaps I could answer for you regarding traveling nurses or my situation?
So you only have enough room for just 2 nurses between your 2 properties?
Yes.
Now, are they like full apartments with their own kitchen? They're not just boarding rooms?
The one is an actual apartment. The other one I would refer to as an efficiency apartment because the living room, bedroom is one big room, but it too has kitchen, bath, and actually 2 extra rooms that could be office or whatever that person might choose. But it would be like 2 apartments.
Do you make these renters sign any kind of lease agreement?
Yes.
And in that lease agreement, do you have any stated rules, house rules?
Yes.
And have you provided staff with a copy of those or a copy of the agreement?
No, because it will depend upon the hospital and what their agreements are. And I will have to talk to them and see what their arrangements are in regard to length of stay. But for ordinary house rules, I could determine that.
I think that's what he's kind of asking, if you have just a generic set of rules that you could provide the staff.
No, and to my knowledge, I think I'm the first one in Madison to do this. So I don't think there's a standard.
Well, I think we're only asking because there's a lot of people that do Airbnbs and they have a set of rules, and I think
Right.
that's what we're kind of looking for, like quiet hours. You know, only park
Airbnbs
here.
are completely and totally different.
Right, but there's still just a general set of rules, like, you know, try and be quiet after 10 p.m. Do you see what I'm getting
It's still
at?
a short-term rental,
Right.
ma'am.
Yes, it's a short-term rental, and I think the wording that my attorney suggested using was that they couldn't do anything illegal, they couldn't
Right.
enter into any business arrangement other than living expenses, and I don't have control over their time that they come and go. And of course, with a traveling nurse, some of them would be evening people and some would not. So again, I wouldn't have control over that. But aside from that, parking situation would be street parking only, because there are no extra parking facilities other than street parking. But we do not have an apartment house or anything where there'd be a lot of cars, so I don't think that that would be a problem. But other than that, I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions.
Well, board members are driving at, in rules. I know you're not talking about an Airbnb, but we almost always include something about outside amplified music.
Oh.
With a view to keeping the neighborhood quiet. And I've been past your place. You really don't have anywhere outside for people to sit, do you? Except on that little side porch on 4th Street?
Little side porch?
Well,
This is
look-
about 20 by 10.
This board is, part of the purpose of zoning is to keep people from disrupting everybody else.
Right. I do
Actually,
understand.
that is why we have zoning, to put uses in one, similar uses close to each other, so people don't end up suing each other and at each other's throats and things like that. And so what the board members are asking is, do you have house rules which include no outside amplified music, say from 10 p.m., say to 9 a.m., something like that? Do you have those kind of, I realize you have no control over the nurses coming and going, but that's no different from people that work for a living, you know.
Right.
People that work shifts come and go. So do you have any kind of rules or?
I do not, but I have no objection to something regarding music and maybe even visitation, if you felt that was necessary.
Now, are you gonna limit it to just one person per rental, or is that gonna be in your contract, or are you gonna?
As far as I know, that has always, in the experience I had in West Virginia, that was always the case. But again, I would have to work with the hospital and their agencies to see if they have something to that effect. But pretty much, I was going to check with Bob Courtney's wife and Brooke Reindoller's wife, because both of them are traveling nurses. And I felt that they could give me some feedback as to their contracts and their situations.
But I think the good thing in your situation is you're gonna be living in the same building as these
Right.
people, so she'll know, you know,
Yeah.
the comings and goings, so I think that's good. for
And
them.
I do feel like that's very important if you're close by or in the same building, because then you should know what's going on.
Right, right.
I assume they'll be entering off the 4th Street side, is that where?
They will be. I do have backdoor entrances as well, but that would be just to get to the yard. But yes, they would be entering from the 4th Street.
And of course, there's plenty of parking on on Michigan Road, on that side of your building. And I do know a number of years ago you had applied, it was about 4 years ago maybe? You had considered using your building for craft classes.
Actually, it was music, but close to that.
Well, board members, do you have any other questions? Comments? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposal? Okay, you can have a seat, Ms. Dagger.
Thank you.
If you'd come up to the If you'd like to speak, come up to the podium. Please give your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Linda Knoble. I am a owner of the house at 213 East 4th Street, which is adjacent to Sharon's. My niece, Gina Can, lives there presently. Is part owner also. I guess I came really just to find out, I was not sure that someone would have to actually get an approval for this short-term nurses and who you would rent to. I've been a landlord myself in the past, so I had some questions since she did have to apply for one. So you've answered some of the questions as far as is there going to be just one nurse per unit?
Right.
I kind of strategized in my head, and I thought, well, now if I was a traveling nurse and I could have a roommate or two, you know, that's going to lessen my cost and you know, help me make more money when I went home. So that in return made me think, okay, so if one or two more moved in, then there's going to be more cars out front. There's limited parking right now. Of course, everybody likes to park in front of their house, but it is street parking, so you don't always have that. But the more people, the more problems with parking. And definitely, whoever Sharon rents to has been detrimental to the other people around. So that's why I was concerned on what this was all about. And, you know, does she have some kind of contract with KDH? You know, how's she going to, is she gonna advertise, or is it gonna be on the website? Is she gonna do those kind of things? I think having a set of rules for a person when they move in is very important. I always did when I was a landlord. So they knew exactly what was what. My niece works 3 12-hour days. She goes to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's not Sharon's problem, but it is important that she gets her rest. And if somebody's upstairs partying at certain times, it just makes for bad communications and bad neighbors. So there's my concerns. So maybe Sharon could answer some of those. And if you have any questions for me at this time.
You have any questions, board members?
I would make one comment on it. I understand all those concerns. I think most of those are what the questions that the
Exactly.
board was asking previously. But, I don't, at least for myself in these type of situations, you know, I start of understanding my variance from, this is a single home residence. So
Right.
this could very well be a family living there full-time.
It has been.
So, it's hard for me to expect more out of somebody in a
Nurses?
short-term rental than what we'd expect out of a family that owns it and lives there, you know, so.
I'm just going by past experience. There has been problems.
Yeah, understood, yeah.
And police showing up and drug addicts and so forth.
But-
So there's my concern
Well,
of
and
what's
hopefully it'll
coming
be
next.
I was gonna say, this may
Hopefully
be
with this setup, it would
this
be.
may be a nice change,
Let's
Right,
hope
it could
so.
be.
yeah.
Yeah, let's hope, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Dagger, would you like to answer that?
Sure, be happy to. There are ways of advertising. There are agencies that handle it very similar to VRBO and Airbnb, of which at this time I do not plan on working with them. Any bookings would be entirely through me. Therefore, I would not be doing any advertising in the paper. My next step, if approved, is to go to King's Daughters Hospital and work entirely through them, because I have been told that they have a shortage of vacancies for homes like this. And at this time, unless there would be some drastic change, I do not plan on working through the booking agencies because I don't think it's necessary. And I feel as though I would be capable of booking my own parties to be there.
Well, the concern Mrs. Knoble brought up was having excessive numbers of people in there.
Right.
And I get the opinion from you that you're saying that you're going to have 2 nurses, you're going to have 2 apartments for 2 traveling nurses.
I have 2 locations, but one of them is already leased as a regular apartment. But because they are both deeded together, I brought both of them to you. But at this time, I only have 1 efficiency apartment to lease.
And the husband said there's only gonna be 1 person.
Right,
So you plan on 1 traveling nurse.
Yes, that's what we plan on. And I could, in fact, put that into some type of wording in an agreement that if they ever had to have family visit or something, that I'd have to know about it ahead of time. And I think I should.
Well, yes.
I think that would be fair to them, fair to
Well-
myself, and to my neighbors.
Well, you might also put that if they have family visit, they could only stay a certain number of
Right.
days too. Cause yeah, I would want my family to visit
Yes.
every once in a while, but I mean,
Right.
they couldn't stay the whole time.
And I think that that would be very positive thing to do so that all parties would understand who would be there and for what length of time and what their rights were.
Board members, there have been brought up many possibilities about house rules that involve how many people would be allowed, lengths of stay. Would you like to table this till our next regular meeting to give Ms. Dagger time to submit a set of rules for the board to look at?
I think that'd be prudent, yes, I do.
Or do we wanna make them as part of our motion?
We could certainly put conditions on a motion.
But I think you still need to talk to were you not gonna talk to KDH and see how maybe how
I-
long they're,
I do, and
Yeah.
as well as Tammy Courtney and Carrie Reindauer as well, to get a better feel of their experience with traveling nurses.
maybe that would be.
And yes, I definitely would be contacting KDH.
The reason I brought it up is that I know you're not talking about an Airbnb, but we've invariably had Airbnbs submit a set of rules so that if there are complaints, then you say, well, you promised to do thus and so, and you didn't. Well, of course, we've never had any complaints yet. So, in my view, it would be prudent for us in the board to table this, and at our next regular meeting, that you would present to the board, to the staff, a set of rules for your 1 traveling nurse, which would include, I'd like to see include quiet hours from, we always say quiet hours from 10 PM to 9 AM, and then something about how many people can stay there if they have family visit or friends, for example. That's what my view about the matter is, board members.
But I would want to clarify one thing. You mentioned, you have the 1 apartment that's already rented out as a normal thing.
Yeah.
So, but this does cover that.
Yes.
If you chose to use it, right, for that. I mean, this is written as for both 217 and 215.
Right, and the reason I did that would be that if later there was a change and that person left and the apartment was empty,
Okay,
I
yeah,
could take
no,
care of
then
the
I
2.
think that's fine.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Certainly.
But yes, I totally agree, and quiet hours and number of people is something I too would be concerned with.
But I think as Scott mentioned, it is a little different thing, a traveling nurse situation.
To-
I have a nephew that's been doing this since COVID broke out, and
Right.
yeah, it's a different world. You know, it's a different
It's-
world for those people, and not a lot of time for family visits. They're there for
Right.
6 to 8 weeks. You know, it's you know, they go home, go to sleep for the most part.
It is totally different, and I ran a VRBO in West Virginia for 15 years, and don't want to do that again. And that's why I'm going after traveling nurse, because it is a totally different situation. And you don't have traveling families coming and going.
And we understand, ma'am, these are working people, and they're not just coming here on the weekend for a party or a getaway.
Right.
But then also on here, on the application, it said there's a gap between renters could be filled with occasional overnight weekend stay. Are you still interested in that, or are you just going with the law?
No, I'm not
Okay.
interested in that.
Okay,
I might have family occasionally,
right, yeah, that's
but
okay.
not
So you're just
occasion-
sticking with long-term nurses?
Nurses only,
Okay.
or doctors. Not gonna exclude them. Any other questions from you? And I will, keep in mind what you just asked for and come up with something between now and the next meeting.
Okay. Any more questions, board members?
Ms. Knoble, does that make you feel a little bit better about,
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Because I didn't understand about how the rent is gonna be if you're able to parking situation. And I did not realize that she didn't have any set of rules for the renters coming in that are presently there. So that,
Could you come up to the podium, ma'am, if you want to speak?
I'm sorry. Oh,
You can have a
Oh,
seat, Miss Dagger.
it answers a lot of questions, because like I said, I didn't know about the nurses. I didn't know how many was gonna be able to be in one apartment, so that answers that, and that takes care of a lot of the parking situation that could have developed. And then when she says she doesn't have any set of rules, that answers a lot of questions to the past renters and the renter that's there now.
And I think that's your biggest concern. I think
Yeah.
if we're honest here
Yeah,
about it.
and
Right.
perhaps she
Unfortunately,
also needs a
this
set
isn't
of,
the place to address the current renters.
yeah, maybe she needs a separate set of rules for the people that's in there now, besides the nurses.
Well, okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Board members, I move that we table this application till our next regular meeting. And I move, and in the motion, I instruct Ms. Dagger to present to the staff a set of rules for occupancy, which will specify, among other things, a quiet time from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. and the number of people that will be allowed to stay overnight. That's my motion.
Second.
I think we have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
yes,
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, ma'am, work up a set of rules and certainly include quiet hours for outdoor music, so the neighborhood will be quiet, so nobody will go sit. What this board always has in mind is two of the biggest things are parking, because it's scarce downtown, and noise. And if you have somebody outside with a ghetto blaster, whoops, I can't say that more, with a boombox blasting rock and roll all over the neighborhood, well, as far as I'm concerned, being a board member, that's a no-no. And I'm going to strive to do everything to avoid those kind of problems. So if you could present before our next regular meeting, present to the staff a set of rules, and in my motion, I included specifically quiet time, because whatever we decide, in the next meeting, if we decide to make a motion to grant you a conditional use permit, I will certainly put in the motion quiet time, 10 p.m. to 9 a.m., and something about the number of people that are allowed to stay there. But if you have other rules that you want to include, that would be fine.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your attention. And I also would like to thank you and all the boards who work to keep our city a good and safe place to live, because I know it takes a lot on your part to listen to all of this and to do what's fair and right for everybody. And I thank you ahead of time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, that concludes our business, unless I have omitted something, staff. If we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Oh,
What?
this
We
gentleman.
were told Hanover Baptist Church for renewal, it's supposed to be here at 6:30.
Somebody told you 6:30? You weren't aware that our meeting happens at 6?
Okay, I apologize.
Well, we already took that up, and per practice that we've done with another church in the area, we extended you to a 5-year renewal.
Okay. Is that set in stone?
Well, for the next 5 years.
We had hoped to, with the, should I step over this?
Yes.
We certainly hope with the amount of investment and the gigantic nature of the project, that we could extend that out for a longer period of time and not have to come back so frequently. With the purchase of the property and what we put into it so far, and this building that'll take place over the summer, we will probably have close to $2.5 million in this. We've got 750 people or so coming into the community this summer to help us in the construction process. They're gonna stay in local hotels, they're gonna buy groceries at local stores and eat at local restaurants, and hopefully find a love for Madison that would have caused them to come back on some other weekends at other times. But it would help us if we could make a humble request that this permit be extended for a 25-year period.
Board members, what's your view on this?
We already voted on it.
Well, we could certainly vote to rescind that motion, and especially since he wasn't here, and somehow,
And I apologize.
well, somehow there was a miscommunication, because we did start at 6:30 in the past. And we had a rule change effectively this month that we start at 6 or 15 minutes after conclusion of Plan Commission. Do you have any comments or?
The board wants to reconsider it, I mean, you can make a motion to do it.
That's certainly in our power. What's your opinion, board members? The way it is now, let me put it this way. The granting of terms of conditional uses are generally dependent on the nature of the enterprise that wants the conditional use, and the view of the board, the probability that there's going to be trouble, disturbance to the surrounding neighborhood. As you're well aware, the purpose of zoning is to put uses, separate uses, residential, big industry, Walmart type stuff.
Yes, sir.
So that everybody can get along as well as they can and protect their investment in their
Sure.
home or their business as best they can, and avoid silly lawsuits, and
We respect that.
that's why we have zoning.
Yes, sir. And this is right in the middle of a 15-acre parcel. So,
Yes, I went out there today and looked at it.
yes, sir.
So, in as much as we also always want to make sure that the people get heard, and what we've done is given you 5 years for the reason that we've done that with another church here. And after 5 years, board members, we can reconsider it now, or you can just come back in 5 years. If you're just the pastor, if you're still the pastor, you probably will be.
Have been for a while.
So what's your pleasure, board members? Would you like to reconsider this?
Well, I think if that's what we've done in the past for other places of worship. I think it just makes sense to start at least now with the 5 and then take it from there.
And think of the way the conditional use works. Like at the beginning of our meeting, we look at these renewals. You know, most of these are on a 1-year turnover basis.
Yes, and we've renewed it for
There you
1
go.
year for the last
And those are
several years.
automatically done if they're not, if there's no complaints or issues. So the same issue at 5 years, if there's no complaints or issues, that'll be reapproved.
Or at the end
But
of,
the other, the other thing
sorry.
I'd say, if we granted you 25 years, within that 25 years, if there were complaints and issues, that conditional use would get addressed and could be revoked if proven to be justified. So the length is not a guaranteed from the stance that you can do anything you want. I mean, it gives you a time limit before it's reviewed again. But if things happen within the term of that conditional use, it can still be addressed, so.
Certainly. And we absolutely want to be a good neighbor
Sure,
to those around
sure.
us.
so I get the feeling, board members, you're content with our previous motion, 5-year term?
I am.
Well, that seems to be the sense of the board. So I think we will stick with what we had done. And 5 years from now, you won't have to worry about this for 5 years. And I'm operating on the assumption you will be a good neighbor. And 5 years from now, if you want an extension, you can just ask for it. And then you'll have 5 years of track record that say, hey, look, we've been here umpteen years, never had any problems. And a board 5 years from now may say, very good chance they'd say, yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
You're
And
welcome.
again, I apologize for not knowing the time differential.
It was our first one with the change time, so, yeah.
You were the first poor soul that had this problem.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
No, we didn't.
Trying to get in there.
We didn't.
No, we didn't finish that motion.
Oh, ma'am,
Well,
yeah.
We adjourn.
we've had a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Pose no. We are adjourned. Well, thank you.
This guy.